How did Chinese people express their emotion? We let out our feelings in various ways. In general terms, Chinese people are reserved. We tend to keep our feelings to ourselves instead of sharing them with others. Even if we do show our emotions occasionally, we do it in a very implicit way. So, when you want to communicate with the Chinese, you have to read between the lines in order to seek his connotation. Whereas the younger generation of China seem to be much more expressive than their parents, which can be demonstrated by the phenomenon that they are constantly posting the feelings on social media, often with pictures or emojis. Why some people are not good at expressing themselves? Well, I think there are both cultural and temperamental reasons. In most Asian countries, for example, having a reserved manner is considered a virtue, while Westerners universally consider extroversion to be a good quality. Of course, things are not absolute. The above mentioned comparison doesn't mean that all Asian students are shy and introverted. Some people are just born adequate at expressing their feelings. The conclusion is expressivity is the intertwined results of environment and genes. Who like to chat more, men or women? Apparently, women are more talkative than men. Actually, I do have some female friends who are basically chatterboxes. If you do not interrupt them, they can go on and on forever. And I'm not exaggerating here. But on the other hand, men are in general more composed and prudent about what they say. It seems to me that in almost all cultures, men are supposed to honor his words, and that a man that talks too much will be considered not trustworthy and womanish. I think the root of such difference comes from evolution. Ancient men out there hunting must remain silent all the time, lest they got noticed by their prey, while women gathering fruits had heaps of time to shoot the breeze with each other. Year after year, nature selected the genes. Why would it be boring if we only have agreements in a conversation? Well, this is because when we are engaged in a conversation with another person, we don't just want to hear the repetition of our own opinion. We want to get something out of the conversation, like some new perspectives or a deeper understanding of certain social issue. But if we only hear some exactly identical opinion with our own, it's a waste of our time. Therefore, when we are in a discussion with our friends, we should try to express ourselves freely, so that we can both benefit from a talk. Just like a comparison that someone said before, if you have an apple and I have another apple, we make an exchange, we still have one apple respectively. But if you have an idea and I have another idea, when we make an exchange, we would both have two ideas.
Okay, here's a short little part 3 video on the topic of expressing oneself, not yourself, oneself. Remember, part 3 is not personal. They're not talking just about you. We want to know about people in general. Let's have a listen.
How did Chinese people express their emotion? We let out our feelings in various ways. In general terms, Chinese people are reserved. We tend to keep our feelings to ourselves.
Okay, so maybe you noticed that twice now he said feelings instead of feelings. The pronunciation of the word is feelings. But let's look at the structure here. Okay, well, you did start with various ways, so I would expect to hear which ways. But then right after that he says people are very reserved, they keep their feelings to themselves. So he doesn't actually tell us what the various ways are. So the first sentence and the second sentence seem to be kind of contradictory. It doesn't continue this line of thought here at all. But okay, some good, he uses the word or the term general terms, because of course you can't overgeneralize, right? I mean, some people might not be reserved. And in the next sentence, let's listen first.
We tend to keep our feelings to ourselves instead of sharing them with others. Even if we do show our emotions occasionally, we do it in a very implicit way.
Okay, so here is a concession. So even though sometimes people might not do what everybody generally does, they do it implicitly. They do it in a way that's not very clear, not very open. So what I mean by concession is, he says, remember in the beginning, he says, in general terms, people are very reserved, even though sometimes they're not. This part here is the concession. Let's see. So implicit, that's a pretty good word to use.
So, when you want to communicate with the Chinese, you have to read between the lines in order to seek his connotation.
Okay, there's some good and some not so good here. What's not so good is it's not with the Chinese, it's with the Chinese person. Chinese person, Japanese person, Indian person. Read between the lines, that's pretty good. So you have to look for the meaning behind the words. But then this connotation, this is not the right word. A connotation is kind of like a connection that people form. Like, for example, there's a connotation between flowers and chocolate and Valentine's Day, because people associate Valentine's Day with chocolate and flowers. So maybe he wanted to say, in order to find their true meaning, but true meaning and connotation are not the same thing. Connotation is not the right word here.
Lines in order to seek his connotation. Whereas the younger generation of China.
Okay, so whereas is used to contrast. So we're contrasting the younger generation with what? I don't know. I would expect to see them contrasting the younger generation with the older generation, but he just says whereas the younger generation. So all of this, is this true for the older generation? He didn't clearly say that. So I'm not sure what he's contrasting the younger generation with, but anyway.
Generation of China seem to be much more expressive than their parents.
I missed it. Okay, so he was contrasting the younger generation with the parents. Now this makes more sense. Okay, I got it.
Which can be demonstrated by the phenomenon that they are constantly posting the feelings on social media, often with pictures or emojis. So,
first of all, does that mean older people don't post pictures or emojis? I mean, you can't say that. The examiner is going to ask you. Remember in part 3, the examiner is going to ask you follow-up questions on what you say. Let's see, what is good about this? Which can be demonstrated by. Phenomenon is not bad. It's not that great, though. I don't know why it's the feelings. It should be their feelings, not the feelings. I don't know. I just feel this is very, very oversimplification of the situation. But anyway, let's move on to the next question.
Why some people are not good at expressing themselves?
Oh, good grief. This question should be, why are some people not good at expressing themselves?
Well, I think they're both cultural and temperamental reasons.
Okay. Not a bad idea. Let's see. So you've got two causes. Cultural reasons, temperamental reasons. Let's see how he develops this. I see here he's talking about Asian countries. So it looks like he's going to develop the cultural idea.
In most Asian countries, for example, having a reserved manner is considered a virtue.
There's some great language here. Having a reserved manner is considered a virtue. Some noun is considered a virtue. Great language.
While Westerners universally consider extroversion to be a good quality.
Oh boy. Oh, I see the next sentence. Of course, things are... Let's listen to this.
Of course, things are not absolute.
Well, this is a contradiction, isn't it? He just said, Westerners universally consider extroversion to be a good quality. And then the next sentence, of course, things are absolute. That is such a contradiction. That is not coherent. That is not logical. And you are going to get hammered on your score for coherence if you say things like this. Now, some good here, universally. Oh, and also here, we've got the passive voice. Oh, no, it's not passive voice, sorry. But universally is a good phrase to use. And also absolute is a good phrase to use. So if things are always true in all situations, they are absolute.
Things are not absolute.
Mm-hmm.
The above-mentioned comparison doesn't mean that all Asian students are shy and introverted.
Nope. Okay, here, the above mentioned, this is used for writing, where when you write, you fill up a page, and then you can talk about the above mentioned. But when you talk, there's no filling up of a page. There's nothing above your words when you speak. So you can't say the above mentioned. The mentioned, not above. There's no above. You can say the mentioned comparison, but drop this. This is only used in writing.
Comparison doesn't mean that all Asian students are shy and introverted.
I'm kind of curious why he is focusing on students now, but okay.
Some people are just born adequate at expressing their feelings.
Again with the feelings, it's feelings.
The conclusion is, expressivity is the intertwined results of environment and genes.
Okay. Let's see, pronunciation-wise, this word is intertwined. So it's like a combination of environment and genes. Or another way of saying that sometimes is nature and nurture. Or in this case, it's the other way around. Nature is nature is genes. And nurture is environment. Instead of saying environment and genes, people sometimes use other words. Nurture and nature. This here, the conclusion is, this is not really a phrase that people use very much when they speak. So, I don't know, how would I say this? So, why don't I say to sum up? So, to sum up, I believe expressivity is the intertwined results of environment and genes. The conclusion is, that just sounds more like something you would use in writing.
Who like to chat more, men or women?
Likes.
Apparently, women are more talkative than men.
This word is talkative, not targetive. Talkative. Apparently. Okay, let's see how he's going to justify this.
Actually, I do have some female friends who are basically chatterboxes.
The chatterboxes is a good word to use. Okay, let's see. Okay, go on.
I have some female friends who are basically chatterboxes.
Mm-hmm.
If you do not interrupt them, they can go on and on forever. And I'm not exaggerating here.
Okay, this go on and on. That's a good phrasal verb to use. So like continue talking, you should go on.
But on the other hand, men are in general more composed and prudent about what they say.
I would really suggest that in 2020 you don't overgeneralize like this when it comes to talking about men and women. The examiner is going to ask you why. They're definitely going to ask you why.
It seems to me that in almost all cultures, men are supposed to honor his words.
Okay, this is men, so why is this not there? Men are supposed to honor their words. Now, if you say this, what does that mean? Does that mean women lie? Women don't honor their words?
And that a man that talks too much will be considered not trustworthy and womanish.
Okay, in 2020, is that a bad thing?
I think the root of such difference comes from evolution.
Okay, the idea of using the word root is good, but this should be differences. So the root of these differences come from evolution. Okay, interesting idea.
Ancient men out there hunting must remain silent all the time.
Okay, now remember must, because he's talking about ancient men, right? So this happened a long time ago. Must cannot be used when you talk about the past tense. The past tense of must is had to. So the men out there hunting had to remain silent all the time.
Remain silent all the time, lest they got noticed by their prey.
And this word is not praise, it's prey. The animals they hunted were the prey.
While women gathering fruits had heaps of time to shoot the breeze with each other.
Okay, so let's look at the language. Heaps of time, that's a great word, a lot of time. Shoot the breeze, more idiomatic language. Shooting the breeze means to chat, that's great.
Year after year, nature selected the genes.
Selected the genes. I'm not sure about the last sentence. Selected the genes to do what? Well, overall, if I look at this answer, I mean, the language is really good. And in the IELTS test, of course, you're judged on your language, not the content of what you say. But if you say something like this, the examiner is definitely going to ask you to explain your ideas more.
Why would it be boring if we only have agreements in a conversation?
Now, this is an unreal situation, so it should be, why would it be boring if we only had? Wait a second, what? Two? Why is there two?
If we only have agreements.
Oh, there's no two, of course. Why is two there? Okay, there we go.
Why would it be boring if we only have agreements in a conversation? Well, this is because when we are engaged in conversation with...
Okay, engaged and conversation go together very well. Great words. Well, and engaged is great anyway.
...another person, we don't just want to hear the repetition of our...
Okay, this word is repetition. We don't just want to hear the repetition.
...want to hear the repetition of our own opinion.
Is that true? Because I think some people do want to hear that others have the same opinion as they do. It's what we call an echo chamber. So somebody says something and everyone else says the same thing. So it's kind of like an echo. We call that an echo chamber. I don't know. Remember before you said you can't overgeneralize, but he's doing the same thing now. He's overgeneralizing.
...of our own opinion. We want to...
Who's the we? Isn't it some people?
...something out of the conversation, like some new perspectives or a deeper understanding of certain social issue. But if we only hear some exactly identical opinion with our own...
Okay, now hang on a second here. So if we only hear the and some never go together. So if we only hear the exact identical opinion, I would say as. With is not wrong, but I would say as. But this should not be an adverb. It's not describing identical. It's describing the opinion.
...our own, it's a waste of our time. Therefore, when we are in a discussion with our friends, we should try to express ourselves freely so that we can both benefit from a talk. Just like a comparison that someone said before.
Okay, just one thing. People don't say comparisons. People make comparisons. So just like a comparison that someone made before.
You have an apple and I have another apple. We make an exchange. We still have one apple respectively. But if you have an idea and I have another idea, then we make an exchange. We would both have two ideas.
I don't know what this is. I'm not sure this is a comparison. This little story here about the apples, I guess it's an analogy, but anyway, it's not a, what did he say, comparison? I think it's comparison. I mean, I don't really understand the analogy here about the apples. Maybe it's something that people in China say, or Chinese people say. I don't quite get it, but it doesn't matter. There's nothing wrong with the language. I've just never heard this before. So this person used some great vocabulary. The grammar is pretty good. He was reading, so I can't really comment too much on the pronunciation. But his ideas, I thought, were very much overgeneralized.